children today. I mean, you know, every day, you know. I mean, we have a family Bible that's filled. We went to 14 funerals with our son's friends in 1 year. 14, all from addiction. I don't know, they're just dropping like flies every day.
When a person dies from an opiate overdose, the heart slows down, the lungs begin working harder and harder to compensate. Fluid builds up in the lungs, and they end up what we describe as drowning in their own fluid.
My mother was a heroin addict for 18 years up until I was about 14, 15 years old. My household at first was my father, my siblings. My childhood wasn't a very good childhood. I grew up around a lot of drugs in my household. In the area I lived in, my mother moved us to Pennsylvania to try to seek a better life. You know, I experienced domestic violence. My father was physically abusive to me. So that led to me acting out at a young age, and it just led to me making a whole bunch of bad decisions. Being a 17-year-old kid in state prison for years. When I was younger, before I went to prison, I smoked weed every now and then. You know, but that was really about it. It was more like a social thing. Came home from prison when I was about 22 years old. Came home, was doing good, not getting in no trouble, not using drugs. My mother was killed in a car accident, January 2nd, 2004, and that turned my world upside down. I had to go identify her body in the coroner's office. Seeing my mother on that coroner slab did something to me that I still, you know, recover from to this day. I couldn't sleep, so a family friend recommended that I take something to calm my nerves. I took it, put me to sleep good. From that, I ended up graduating into Percocets. Taking Percocets to help me sleep, help me calm my nerves. Now I'm full-blown into the streets selling drugs. I justified saying I wasn't an addict, even though I was addicted to Percocets because I had a lot of money at the time. I had fancy cars, fancy jewelry, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, but I'm getting high. So I stopped taking the Percocets one day, withdrawal starts kicking in. 2 days later, I'm sniffing a bag of dope. Worst decision I ever made in my life. At least that's what before I go to prison, I'm sniffing all the time. Then I start shooting. Put a needle in my vein for something I said I'd never do. I had a aunt who died from AIDS, from shooting drugs, and I'm doing the same thing. I maxed my sentence out, so I'm not on probation, parole, or anything. First time I'm unsupervised since I was probably about 11 years old. Doing good for a little while, then I have a relapse, using drugs on and off. I end up going back to jail for an old case that pops up. In the course of jail, I'm focused. I'm saying I'm not going to jail. I'm married now, I have children. I'm doing really good. Come home, April 24th of 2016. I have a bad weekend. I decide to go to Philadelphia, get me a couple bags of dope. I bring them back, sniff them. First one I sniff puts me out, overdosed. I was unresponsive for about 8 minutes. No heartbeat, no pulse, no nothing. My heart stopped beating for so long that my veins, they couldn't find the veins to give me the drugs to counteract the opiates that I ingested. I ended up waking up in the hospital with a tube, with an IV in my neck. They used to save my life. Going to rehab now, I come home, have a relapse again. This time I get on the Vivitrol shot. Vivitrol won't allow me to get high and blocks my cravings. I'm on that for 6 months. Decided to get off it. I want to do it on my own. Since then, I haven't got high. That was September 17th of last year. I'm coming up on a year. And since then, my life's been awesome.
Where do I begin a story that I should not be alive to tell? I started in high school. I was probably like 17. Just like, you know, the party on the weekends, hang out with your friends, play cards. Fun stuff. So I thought, you know, it was pretty innocent in my mind back then. But it didn't take long until, you know, some of my friends would be like, you know, Trish, it's not even a weekend. Like, why are you drinking on a Wednesday? And I didn't think it was a problem. I'd just laugh it off. You know, it was not a big deal. It didn't take long until it took over, and I was also too caught up in a relationship at the time with a drug dealer. But I was just too busy drinking, smoking weed, helping sell drugs with him. Where do I begin a story that I should not? Just like, you know, the party on the weekends, hang out with your friends, play cards, the fun stuff. So I thought, you know, it was pretty innocent in my mind back then. But it didn't take long until, you know, some of my friends would be like, you know, Trish, It's not even a weekend. Like, why are you drinking on a Wednesday? And I didn't think it was a problem. I just laugh it off. You know, it's not a big deal. It didn't take long until it took over, and I was also too caught up in a relationship at the time with a drug dealer. But I was just too busy drinking, smoking weed, helping sell drugs with him. So I quit school, signed myself out. Eventually he got caught up with the feds, went to jail. Before that happened, he abused me, broke my jaw, put a metal plate in it, and I was prescribed opiates. So that's where the opiates began. I was 23, I was introduced to heroin. You know, I never thought ever in my life that would happen to me. I remember being a kid, you know, in high school, sitting at the assembly, listening to some speaker tell me about drugs and alcohol and where it took them in life. And that was never gonna be my life. But it became my life. So when heroin came to the picture, everything went downhill. That was the huge reality check for me. Like, I didn't think I had a problem when it was just drugs or, you know, weed and alcohol. But it didn't take long to find out that once I started using heroin, shooting up at that my life was just really going downhill fast. So I have a good family, very supportive, unconditionally loving to me. But I didn't care about what I was putting them through. I just wanted to feel that high. Been in jail 9 times, was upstate in Muncie. Never thought that would happen to me. So for the past 7 years, I've been in nothing but jails and institutions. I almost died last year. I had 15 months clean, and I decided to use one night and overdosed, needed Narcan 3 times. And really almost died. And that's when I was sent upstate. It has cost me so much pain. because I had to go through time, hard time, for using drugs.
Opioid receptors exist because our bodies produce hormones and endorphins that allow us to naturally mitigate pain. They were never designed for those foreign substances that are much more powerful. Repeated use or abuse of an opioid drug can actually change the way an individual's brain chemistry works and lead to physical and psychological dependence. The body may not feel normal anymore without the drug's interaction, and withdrawal symptoms may start in between doses or when an individual stops taking the opiate. In fact, opiate drugs, including prescription painkillers and heroin, can produce withdrawal symptoms just hours after the last dose. And the symptoms such as nausea and vomiting, stomach cramps, muscle cramping and aches, diarrhea, depression, fever, agitation, anxiety, which can last for a week or longer. That's not the only bad news. Opioid receptors can become damaged from prolonged use of opioids, or by using opioids in too high of a dose. Once these opioid receptors become damaged, they are damaged for life. They do not heal, they do not recover. Once they become damaged, that person has a physical chronic disease that they will have to manage one way or another. So let's now explore why there is an opioid epidemic.
So in the 1990s, doctors were under a lot of pressure from advocacy groups and federal government to treat pain as this really serious medical issue. And there was a pretty good reason for that. There were about 100 million Americans suffering from chronic pain.
The undertreatment of pain is a major public health problem. Whatever the cause, some end up shuffling from doctor to doctor, desperate for relief.
Under this pressure, doctors turn to opiate painkillers, highly potent drugs that bind to receptors in the nervous system and reduce pain messaging to the brain. And one reason doctors turn to opiate painkillers is because drug companies like Purdue Pharma said that they were safer and less addictive than other painkillers on the market.
We now find that these medicines are much safer, much more powerful, much more versatile than we used to think, and we feel that they should be used much more liberally for people with all sorts of chronic pain.
Yeah, that wasn't true at all, that these drugs were safer than the other ones on the market. And in fact, Purdue Pharma ended up paying hundreds of millions of dollars in fines for its false claims later on.
The damage had been done, and by 2012, physicians wrote 259 million prescriptions for opiate painkillers, enough to give a bottle of pills to every adult in the country.
So you get hurt. Doctors prescribe opioids and you get hooked. Or maybe you're a kid and you get hooked on pills that you most likely stole from a family member. Either way, the prescriptions runs out. Withdrawals are hell, and opioids hijack your brain. On the street, the going rate for painkillers is about $1 per milligram. If you are hooked, you may need around 160 milligrams per day. You have to make a lot, or steal a lot, to score and feed your ever-increasing addiction. In 2014, about 34,000 adults died in car crashes. About the same number of deaths resulted in gun violence, but more than 47,000 people died of drug overdoses.
Dylan's drug use started in his early teen years, probably as more typical rebellious teenage kind of partying things, but he was always a different kind of kid. He had some pretty significant anxiety. He had some hurt in his life. He had a very fractured relationship with his father that always bothered him. What his friends saw was a happy-go-lucky, good-looking, just nice kid. What I knew was the anxiety and depression issues that he was able to keep from other people. It was like he was two different people out around his group than he was in the house around family. The longer the drugs went on and the older he got, the worse he felt about himself. His only confidence was, you know, in being sort of the life of the party and the ladies' man, and, you know, girls loved him and everybody thought he was just this great guy. But his pain was real, and the party changed from being a party to just a way to cope. Drinking and smoking some weed to what I think the start of his opiate addiction was getting pills. However, he was able to get his hands on prescription pills like kids do. He did easily, and it was a pill issue. It was the herbal supplements that you can buy at places that really are just synthetic forms of opiates. It went from taking the pills in his later teens to early 20s, I'd say early 20s, to snorting, crushing them up and snorting them. And his full-blown IV drug use was a very short time in his history. Once he started shooting heroin, I'd say
It was a matter of maybe 3 months before he got arrested, because once you are desperately an IV drug user, you have to feed that habit. And to feed that habit, he did what most IV drug users do, and he was arrested for theft. Emotional upset very well. He preferred to be numb to it and not have to feel it. So that led to an overdose in June of 2016. And I found him that time. I had a feeling something wasn't right. I tried to call him and he didn't answer, and I tried to text him and he didn't answer, so I just got my car and drove over. And he was on the floor, and I couldn't turn him over. He was wedged sort of in between a wall and a back door. So I started screaming for help, and nobody was home. And I actually remember standing up at one point and just looking at the sky and screaming, like praying, please God, somebody needs to help me. I can't even turn him over. And a neighbor came, and she helped me turn him over, and she called 911 while I started CPR. He was purple, and he wasn't breathing, and he had no heartbeat. There was no pulse. And he was clenched, so I know how to do CPR, but I couldn't open his jaw. So I had to just blow through his nose. And every time I blew in, his chest would rise, and then when I would stop, the air would rush back out his nose, and that was it. There was nothing. He was not even gasping for air. I had assumed he was probably already gone, but I just kept screaming for help. And the ambulance got there, and the police right behind them, and they gave him Narcan, which did bring him back around. And the police searched him and found one last pack of heroin in his pocket. I rode in the front of the ambulance with him to Geisinger, and the whole time I could hear him in the back telling the paramedics, tell my mom I'm sorry. Can you please tell my mom I'm sorry? He was more of a nuisance to them. There was no social worker to come talk to us, not even when he asked. if he could speak to someone to help him find a rehab. They gave him a sheet of paper with phone numbers on it. He was supposed to call on his own. Somehow he found this place in Florida, and they actually called back while we were still sitting in the emergency room and said they would have a plane ticket at the airport in Harrisburg. If he got there the next day, he could come, but he had to be there by the next day or his spot would be gone. So we got him through the night. I took him to his dad, dropped him off, gave him a hug and a kiss and said goodbye, and that was the last time I saw him. His plan was to stay there for 90 and hopefully get into their halfway house and continue. He felt the program was a good program. He felt he was learning things he hadn't learned in other programs, and he was excited to be there. But again, something happened in that rehab, some kind of disagreement or argument with someone, and Dylan's fight or flight instinct kicked in and he ran. I wired money to a hotel to get him a room for the night, to get him off the street so we could make the phone calls so we could figure out what we were gonna do, but he would at least be off the street. And somehow, in that hotel room in Florida, he managed to find somebody to sell him heroin. And then around 11 o'clock, a police car pulled in front of my pastor's house. And then I knew what was going on. They couldn't tell me over the phone. They had to contact authorities here. So the officer came in the house, and I knew. And I remember covering my ears and just screaming, "Don't say it, don't say it." He kept saying, "Ma'am, ma'am." And I'm just telling him, "Don't say it," because I just felt like if he doesn't say it, maybe it's not true. And he finally said, "Ma'am, your son is deceased."
In Scranton. But instead, troopers say Mirabelli drove his truck north on Interstate 81 towards Susquehanna County with the victim, Preston Layfield, and Amanda Wada on board.
Bottom line is they drove right past the hospital and they continued north on Interstate 81, and why they exactly did that at this point, we're not really sure.
According to court papers, as the group reached northern Lackawanna County, where they heaved Rose's body near some railroad tracks. Troopers say before the trio stopped for gas at the service station, they placed a hat and glasses on the victim. And if somebody's ODing, you should help them.
Take it to the hospital would be the number one thing, you know, not strangling and dump their bodies is absolutely terrible.
An autopsy for Joshua Rose is scheduled for today. Prosecutors say after that, they expect to file more serious charges. Suzanne Goldklang, Newswatch 16.
The Good Samaritan Law is a Pennsylvania law. This means if you and a friend are both using drugs and you see your friend overdosing, if you call 911 for help, you will not be prosecuted. The law is referred to as the Good Samaritan Law. It's to encourage people to call for help rather than run and let someone die of an overdose. Stay away from drugs by avoiding situations where drug use may be taking place, and do not give in to peer pressure to use drugs. If you or somebody you know is feeling depressed, seek help. Keep active and feed your body healthy activities. If you are injured and prescribed a painkiller, take them only if you need them. Any unused painkillers or prescription drugs should be properly disposed of. All communities have drug return boxes. Check with your local sheriff's office to find the nearest return box. Do not flush unused drugs down the drain. The chemicals will end up in the rivers and harm the environment and fish. Avoid using gateway drugs. Alcohol and marijuana use often leads to other drugs. Two main reasons one becomes addicted to opioids are: one, the person was prescribed painkillers and became addicted; 2, the person started using alcohol or marijuana socially at parties, which affects their decision making. And at some point, they try opioids and like it. That is until they realize they are addicted. Then, it's a lifetime battle to get and stay clean.
Smack, dope,
H, horse, held that wood, girl, black,
tar,
diesel,
Shiva, office,
junk, heroin.
it will take everything you've ever loved and it will destroy it.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to visit DJ Choice's website. There's resources on prevention and recovery. So I love you guys. I'm in this fight with you and never give up.
What do you guys think? So, my name's Andy, by the way. I've never done drugs, period. I've never even smoked a cigarette. And growing up and as I got older, I just assumed that people that did that kind of stuff were weak and not as strong as me. And I did feel that way up until 2007 when my cousin Bobby died from a heroin overdose. And I was driving across the bridge in, I don't know if you know where Melton or West Melton is. I was driving across the bridge in West Melton and I noticed my uncle getting out of his car and walking into my grandparents' house. And I call him up because him and I joke around with each other all the time. I said, hey, what are you doing, man? He goes, oh, I'm gonna go inside and tell mom and dad that Bobby passed away last night. Yeah, right. That's not funny. He goes, I'm not joking. He goes, I found him dead in his bedroom, laying on the bed with a needle in his arm. I knew that Bobby had some problems. I had no idea it was heroin. I just assumed that he was smoking weed or something like that. I know he went to rehab a couple times, and I found all this out afterwards. He went to rehab a couple times. Yeah, October 16, 2007. So last week, it would have been 12 years ago. Bobby went to Warrior Run High School. I don't know if you guys played in sports at all. The last person you saw up there, Paula, her son went to Shikellamy down in Sunbury. The girl in the center video, Trisha, she went to Lewisburg High School. Since we shot that video, she actually went back to prison again. It's out of her 10th time in prison. And then actually got out again and has now been back to a couple of rehabs since then. I'm not really sure how she's doing today. I haven't checked up on her in a couple weeks. So she's still struggling with her addiction. The first person you saw, Frank Rodriguez from Sunbury, Pennsylvania as well. He has a business in Melton, cutting hair, barbershop. And we brought him with us today. So we're gonna have him come out and talk to you guys a little bit about his recovery and how he's doing. Give him a round of applause for sharing his story.
Good morning, everybody. A little better than that. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. There you go. I want to thank you guys for sitting patiently through the presentation. I want to thank your school for allowing us to be here, DJ Choices for the show that they put on, and our sponsors, Alexander Burke and Silver Moon. You see my story, and that's just a short version of it. What you didn't see on there, because at the time I was too embarrassed and ashamed of myself when that video was shot, was that when I overdosed, my sons were in the house. One of my sons was sleeping in the bed with me and my wife. And when I went to the bathroom to sneak off to use drugs, just thinking, all right, I'm gonna get high and, I'm gonna enjoy the rest of my night, and ended up overdosing. My son, for some reason, woke up at 1 o'clock, and 1 o'clock in the morning, woke my wife up and said, "Where's Daddy at?" My wife looked for me in the bedroom. I'm not there. She come find me in the bathroom. Basically dead. No heartbeat, no pulse, nothing. So if it wasn't for my son waking my wife up, my story would have been a whole lot different. You know, my son might have been speaking to you guys, you know, speaking to schools down the line, talking about how he lost his father. I thought when I was younger that I had all the excuses to use drugs because I grew up in a broken childhood, a broken family. I was physically abused. We were poor. My entire family, my mother, my father, my aunts, my uncles, everybody used drugs. It was common in my family, so I thought I had all the reasons to use drugs. And I realized, not until I was a little bit older, that I was just making excuses. That every time I faced some type of hardship, I would run to drugs or run to acting up and criminal activity. And it completely ruined, you know, my teenage years, my 20s, and most of my 30s. I spent 17 years in prison because of choices that I decided to make. And, you know, like I said, I missed out on all the good years. I went to prison, I was in the 9th grade, I was 15 years old. And had to learn very quickly that that's not where I wanted to be. My hopes with coming to share my story is that you guys can learn from somebody else's mistakes. I wish I would have learned from other people's mistakes because life's way too precious to make them all ourselves. And with a show of hands, can you show me how many of you guys know somebody who's been affected by drugs or alcohol? All right, so if we look around, that's a whole lot of hands. And two things that showed me. One is that we're not alone, because I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people that didn't raise their hands, because that would have been me. When I was in school, I wouldn't have raised my hand. So there's a whole bunch of people that didn't raise their hands that know somebody who's been affected by drugs and alcohol. So it shows us we're not alone. And number two, it shows us that it's a huge problem. When we see people that we know are going through some tough times, we have to hold each other accountable as friends. The same way for all the athletes in here, the football players, basketball players, field hockey, all that stuff. When we're playing as a team and we see somebody that's out of position or somebody that's not, you know, they don't have their head in the game, we hold them accountable. We tell them, all right, come on, tighten up. That's what we have to do with our friends. If people in my life would have held me accountable for my actions, I would probably save myself a lot of headache. And when I say hold each other accountable, because when people used to tell me that when I was younger, I used to be like, that sort of sounds like I'm going to be telling on somebody, like people are going to call me a snitch or something like that. And it's not that at all. When you see your friend, if your friend's going through something at home, if they're going through something in school, speak to them. You know, reach out to them, let them know that you're there for them. And then if you feel like that's not getting, the situation's not getting remedied, then take the next step. There's, for everybody that plays sports, you can go to your coaches. There's always a cool set of parents within the group of friends that you can speak to. There's always teachers that we relate to more than the other, more than other teachers that you can speak to. You guys have the SAP program here also, where you can get help anonymously, and please just don't think of it as snitching or telling on anybody. It's the same way as if you would see one of your friends getting ready to jump off a building or playing in traffic, something like that. You know, we wouldn't let them do that. So we have to take that same approach when we see our friends and our loved ones making choices that can potentially lead them to death. And a lot of times, we think, myself, believe me, I'm speaking to myself when I say this also, that we're going to do stuff and we're not going to receive the worst outcome. Every time I used to get high, I never in a million years would be like, oh, this could be the last time that I get high, until it was almost the last time I got high. Like Andy told you, I'm a barber, and probably about 1.5 years ago, I was in my barbershop one day, and I was just cleaning up and doing some maintenance on a day we were closed. And I had a friend come into the shop and started speaking to me, and I could see that he was distraught. He was emotionally broken, and we were speaking, and he left, and I'm cleaning up the shop. A couple minutes later, I hear some sirens. A couple minutes after that, I hear some different kind of sirens, so I decided to go outside and take a look. And my friend that was just in the shop with me, they found him dead in the alley. He went, used one time because he was going through some stuff and was stressed out, and decided to get high, and it was literally the last thing he did. He was a father, he was a son, he was a brother, and never in a million years would he have thought that that was going to be the last thing he did. And that's what we're playing with when we decide to get high. Listen, I sold drugs for a lot of years, and I'll be the first one to tell you that I didn't care what was in the drugs. All I wanted was your money. Once I got your money, I didn't care what happened. I didn't care if you overdosed. I didn't care if you got caught with the drugs, if you used them, if you enjoyed it. That wasn't none of my concern. My concern was the exchange, was the money. So just realize that anybody that's willing to sell you drugs or give you drugs, two things. They're being extremely selfish, and the second thing is they don't really care about your well-being. So we have to be super aware of that stuff. And I thank you guys for listening. And like I said, I hope you guys can learn from some of my mistakes, some of the other people's mistakes that you've seen up there. For everybody that raised their hand, that knows somebody who's been affected by drugs or alcohol, reach out to somebody, speak to somebody, and get them the help you need. Because you don't want to be that friend that doesn't say anything, and then the next time you see your friend is during a casket, you know what I mean, or they're in the hospital on life support. You know, it's not a good feeling. So I thank you guys.
Thank you, Frank. So you guys all know what the SAT program is, right? Raise your hands. You guys all know what the SAT program is? Okay. So there's anonymous drop-off boxes in the ladies' locker room, I think, and did you say the library? Library. Library, yes. So, and what this is, guys, you don't gotta put your name on it. Just fill out a paper, drop it in there. If you have a concern, it doesn't have to be about drugs or alcohol. It can be about bullying. It can be about anything at all. Any problems at home. You see your friends having a problem at home. Anything at all, you can drop in that box. Any concerns you have whatsoever. I think that's it, isn't it? We have time for any questions or no? Yes. Okay. All right, so anybody have any questions for Frank about his story or questions about the show?
And I encourage you guys to ask questions. That's what we're here for. So don't hesitate to ask any questions.
Everybody hear that? Why would you care about the people that you're selling drugs to? Because you want to keep your customers alive, right?
Yeah.
Keep coming back?
Yeah, but at the same time, when people are in that lifestyle, you're in it for one thing. You're in it for greed. You know, of course, my end result wasn't, I give him this back, I hope he dies. But if that was an outcome, then so be it. You know what I mean? It's an extremely selfish way to think. And a lot of times, there was points in my life when I was selling drugs, it wasn't necessarily to make money, it was to get high for free. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of times people think that the drug dealers are, you know, it's glorified and stuff like that, but drug dealers, the majority of them are also getting high in the process.
So let me put a different perspective on this, something I've learned in recording these shows and stuff like that. So a drug dealer like himself, you know, they want to buy a good drug. You know, they don't want to buy one that's been cut up and it just gives you somewhat of a high. You want to buy a drug that gives you a real good high, okay? So drug dealers actually were lacing some bags of their drugs with stuff that will actually kill you on purpose, okay? And they do that because they want you to think, well, that idiot that did those drugs aren't as smart as me, aren't as seasoned as I am, and I can do those drugs and not die. But they were good drugs, right? They were the good stuff. That's why I killed them, because they were strong. So they're actually purposely killing a couple customers so they actually gain more customers that way. Does that make sense?
It's a way of, it's sort of a way of like advertising, as crazy as it sounds. But if somebody knows they got drugs from me and such overdoses, they know those drugs are strong. You know, so they're gonna be like, okay, he has strong drugs. And they're gonna think inside their head, the other people that are coming to buy the drugs after knowing somebody just died, they're gonna be like, he didn't know what he was doing. I know what I'm doing. I'm smarter than him. My tolerance is better than him. You know, I've been doing it for longer. That's the type of stuff, you know, that's the type of thought process that goes on.
Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man.
If you knew you were going to die, what's the point of using it?
See, that's the thing, is nobody knows they're going to die.
Nobody thinks they're gonna die. We know that's a possible outcome, but we don't think it's reality. You know what I mean? It's like driving in your car. When you drive somewhere, you know there's a potential you could probably get in an accident, but the chances, you don't think the chances are, you know, they're so slim because you've done it so many times, you know. And we always think it's not gonna happen to me, I'm not gonna be that person that overdoses, you know. That's the way you start thinking when you're using drugs, you know. Everything else takes a back seat.
I'll ask the principal about that in a bit, okay? Any other questions? Any other questions? Go ahead. How has your recovery affected your family?
Very good question. It took a long time for me to build back up trust with my family, with my friends, with my community. My kids, you know, I raised my kids through a visiting room, a prison visiting room. When I took my son took his first steps, said his first words that I witnessed, they was in a penitentiary visiting room. My daughters, I got twin daughters that are 14, and I got another daughter that's 10. They would have to come to the visiting room to see me 3 hours away and have to take off their earrings and their belt and all that type of stuff. And that, I'm sure they didn't like that feeling. They shouldn't have been subject to that. So I had to build up trust with them. Now, some of the stuff I do, I know they're happy with me. You know, I do a lot of work in my community. I'm blessed with the opportunity to come to speak to you guys. I do a lot of work other places to try to make amends for stuff that I did. I helped to tear down a lot of communities, so now I also try to build up some of the same communities that I helped to tear down and set examples. Try to make my family, you know, just try to be a positive role model and a father and a husband.
One other thing, I don't think Frank's completely out of trouble yet, am I correct?
No, absolutely not. I'm still on parole. I have to ask my parole officer to come here. I have to pay fines every month, almost $400 in fines every month, which that money could be going in a whole bunch of better places. You know, and this is stuff from decisions that I made, you know, years and years ago that I'm still paying the consequences for. And I just encourage you guys to make the right decisions. You guys are young, you have your whole life ahead of you. And I'm sure there's not one person in here that wants to, you know, that their end goal is to be like, oh, I want to go to prison, I want to be homeless, I want to be shooting up, you know, I want to be miserable, I want to hate myself, I want to be suicidal. Nobody in here has those plans. Everybody in here wants to achieve stuff in life and wants to be the best they can be. And one thing I can promise you is the second we start messing around with drugs and alcohol and street life, we completely derail all that stuff and we put all that stuff on the back burner. Any goals and ambitions we have, they just get further and further away the more we start making the wrong decisions.
Frank told me in the spring he was planning a vacation, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was planning a family vacation. We were going to go to Puerto Rico. Bought the tickets, rented a car out there, rented a home out there, had activities scheduled. I made the reservations on Thursday. Friday, we were supposed to leave Sunday. Friday at 5:30, my PO calls me, and it just sort of slipped my mind. I forgot to ask permission to my PO. So now my kids, they're excited, their bags are packed, ready to go on vacation, and now I have to come and tell them, I can't go, you know, we can't go on. And then my wife wasn't gonna go by herself, you know, and I had to tell them, look, I'm sorry, but decisions that I've made in my past now ruined my kids' vacation. They were embarrassed, first of all, because they told their schoolmates, they were like, oh, we're going on vacation, so they were embarrassed, they were hurt, you know, all that stuff. And for me as a father, the last thing you want to do is let down your children, you know, and embarrass your children. And even though I wasn't, you know, I didn't do it on purpose in any way, shape, or form, but it was an indirect result of decisions that I made a long time ago. And that's a prime example of stuff that, with my family, with my children, that I had to build back up, you know.
Any other questions? Yes. What changed your mind as a teenager to start using drugs? And how easily were you persuaded to do that?
Okay, when I was younger, I mainly smoked weed and drank. And I did it as a social thing to fit in. And then I moved on to harder drugs. In 2004, my mother was killed in a car accident. And I had to identify her body and I couldn't sleep. And I was up for like 3 or 4 days. Every time I tried to go to sleep, all I seen was my mom laying on the corner slab. So somebody recommended that I take some pills. The pills led to Percocets led to heroin. I did it. I used the drugs to make myself feel better because I had mental health issues that I wasn't dealing with, and I was hurting. So I thought that was my escape. And little did I know that when I stopped using drugs, all those problems were still there. And then I had a whole new set of problems that I created by using drugs. And instead of dealing with my problems the right way and positive ways, I chose to use drugs. And it not only did it take so many years of my life, but it just created a whole different set of problems, than the ones I was already dealing with.
Anybody else? One more. Why didn't you go to the doctor and just get actual meds?
The doctor's the one that told me to take the medication. It was a friend that was a nurse. She was in the medical field, and I went to see a doctor. And the doctor was the one that prescribed me the medication too, that ended up getting me hooked. So it started with pills that were prescribed by a doctor. A lot of times, when people are prescribed pills, a lot of times we take them until they're done. Let's say you break your leg and you go to the doctor gives you 30 pills. You might not need all 30 of them pills. You might get away with taking 20 of them and be all right. But in the process of taking those 20 or however many you take, your body builds up tolerance. So now your body, opiates, your body needs that. And if your body doesn't get that, you get extremely sick. It's equivalent to like the flu times 10 or 15. You won't sleep for a month, you'll have diarrhea, you'll throw up, you'll be hot, you'll be cold, your bones ache, you have mental issues. So a lot of times, a lot of people that are addicted, it starts with medication that a doctor prescribes them. That's extremely, extremely common. And there's a lot of stuff in the news you'll see now where a lot of the big pharmaceutical companies are paying billions of dollars in fines and they're filing for bankruptcy because of stuff like that, where they were misinforming and saying that certain drugs weren't as addictive as they are. And in reality, they knew the whole time, but they were putting it out there because it's a big business.
And I also want to add to that antibiotics, you have to take them until they're done. Antibiotics, you need to take them as prescribed. Painkillers, you don't have to take them at all. You only give them in case of pain. You don't even need to take them at all.
And even for myself right now, I have bad kidneys, not as a result of my drug use or anything like that. It's just sort of a problem that I have. Last summer, I had where my kidneys started acting up. I had to go to the doctor, and I couldn't take the medication they gave me. They prescribed to me painkillers. I can't take it because my body reacts differently. It's almost as if I have an allergic reaction. When I take the painkillers, instead of like breaking out in highs and stuff like that, I want more and I want more, and then that's not enough. Now I want heroin. And, that's the way it reacts to me because my body already knows what it is. That's why it's so important to not start to take them. I always say that it's like putting a glass of water. If you have a glass of water on the edge of a table, you see its potential to spill. If we just move it to the middle so it doesn't spill, we're good. But now if we leave it there and it bumps over and then the glass breaks, now we got to clean up the water. We're probably going to cut ourselves picking up the glass when in reality, if we would have just moved it over to the middle of the table, we wouldn't have all the issues to deal with. That's why it's so important not to start from the beginning. Because once we start, and I'll say this with very high percentage, is no addict, the first time they pick up, no addict thinks, okay, 6 months or 3 months down the line, I'm going to be committing crimes to support my habit. I'm going to lie to my family. I'm going to steal from my family. I'm going to be selling myself short. I'm going to be selling my body. This is the type of stuff that happens when people get addicted and are at their rock bottom.
Thank you, Frank. Give Frank another round of applause for sharing his story. So, Frank will be out in the hallway afterwards. If anybody has any more questions for him, you can ask him directly. We're going to be, follow us on, or let us know what you thought of the show today on any of the social media sites, and we'd love to hear from you and let you know if you took any videos today with your phones. You share them with us. We'd love to have. You're not allowed to have your phones? Oh, sorry. Some schools can, some schools can't. Depends. All right. One of the things that we'll thank our sponsors. This show is completely free to your school today. I want to thank our sponsors for providing the funds for that. Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships, Merck, and also the Silver Moon Furniture. So thank them very much. You guys want to write them a letter, send them an email. We appreciate it. Other than that, I think we're done.